My name is Helle Schmidt. I am the CEO of Save the Children, and I'm the former Prime Minister of Denmark.
Wonderful. So the first question is really about Scandinavia, which is there's a wide perception that Scandinavia has really come up with a model that could work in this era of innovation and capitalism, but also with a strong social safety net. How do you see that model potentially being applicable in other parts of Europe or in other parts of the democratic world?
Well, first of all, I think democracy is about defending our institutions and doing that with muscle and creating better opportunities for participation. But democracy is also the results that come out of democracy. And I think that's where your question comes in. I think you have to find a way of living where people benefit when the society or when the country they live in benefit from globalization. And that means that if a country gets wealthier, everyone, not just the few, has to benefit from this and become not only wealthier, but also have assets that they can use to create agency for themselves. And I think that's one of the successes in the Scandinavian countries, that the benefits of globalization has been distributed in a way so it has been translated into individual assets for the many. That means that there's free access to education, free access to health services, all those things that provides individual freedom and thus also democratic agency.
Wonderful. And when thinking about Europe, there's a perception out there that there's a crisis of the European Union, and you see it in part through Brexit and other developments. But it's also one of the most exciting times for the European Union. There's lots of support. So how do you see this situation?
It's a bit of a paradox what's happening in Europe right now. I think we feel that Europe is losing when the United Kingdom are leaving the European Union. That's a great loss for all of us. And we took it very hard that they didn't want to be part of the European Union anymore. We also see a number of issues where the European Union had difficulty finding its way in terms of immigration, border control, all those issues, economic policy, all those issues that are so important to most people. But at the same time, we are seeing that we have a very high support for the European Union. It hasn't been higher since 1983. So for 25 years, we've not had bigger support, and that actually means that 2/3 of the European population think that the European Union is a good thing, think that the Schengen is a good thing, that even the euro is a good thing, and surely that must mean something. It doesn't mean that everyone is happy and that everything is great, but I think it means that a lot of European citizens have seen that in order to answer the questions with immigration, border control, climate change, economic policy, we need to work together as countries being in Europe, we need to work together.
And traditionally, the democratic world had two real anchors, one in North America and one in Europe. And now the transatlantic relationship seems to be being called in question by populists on both sides, particularly in America. How are you viewing the situation in North America and the United States in particular, and the future of the transatlantic relationship?
Ironically, I don't think the transatlantic relation has been called into question in Europe, actually. I think even the populist movements are not pushing the United States away. So it is a very one-sided breakup. Because we feel that with the current administration in the US, there is a certain elements of breakup that is happening. We have seen it at the NATO summit. We've seen it at the discussions between Trump and Putin lately. So we're seeing that very clearly. But I think if you ask in the European Union and also for the NATO countries whether they want a strong engagement from the US, our closest friend and partner through many, many years, the answer would be a very clear yes. And I lived through times where the dissatisfaction with the US were much higher in the European Union. But despite the leadership right now, I actually think there is a strong realization that that is still our closest friend. But there's a big but, and I think Europeans are seeing that more and more. We're seeing that maybe the United States is withdrawing from that partnership, is withdrawing from that long-standing friendship a little bit. And I think that means that Europeans understand that as a bloc, we have to stand on our own, we have to become more united, and perhaps that is part of the explanation for why more Europeans are actually looking to their own leaders, to their own union, our European Union, to say maybe that's where you have the best friend, and that's where the political answers will come from.
In in terms of the rise of populism, there's a lot of anger against elites. What do you think elites can learn from what's happened, and where do they need to self-correct going forward?
Well, first of all, I just dislike this idea that there's a them and an us. I think we are much more mixed than people normally think, and I think in the middle of the political spectrum, there are a lot of people who feel that they have a lot in common. I would argue that 50% in the middle feel that they have a lot in common. They might not be so vocal, this 50-60%, but that silent majority in the middle of the political spectrum, that is where I get my hope from. I think that is where political decisions for a long time should be coming from, because they should be part of deciding the future of their country and, of course, the European Union. So, but it's true that there has been a lot of antagonism and a lot of them and us, and a lot of criticism of the so-called elite. To a certain extent, I think the elite has brought that on themselves, because for a long time we have not spoken in a compassionate way and an understanding way about immigration, border control, all those issues that are a very big part of people's reality. And we have not spoken about that in a matter-of-fact way where we solve problems. That's why I, as a political leader in my own country, I did a lot to solve problems with immigration, also tightening some rules that needed tightening, because I think it is really important for people to respect their leaders. They have to see that their leaders are dealing with the issues that they care about.
Wonderful. In terms of looking forward at democracy, we're in the midst of unparalleled and unprecedented technological change, which offers both opportunity but also challenges, not only to society but to democracy in particular. How do you think we can address this technological change?
I think it's very exciting to deeply understand how the technological change can help us in democracy. And I think one of the amazing things about social media is that more people than ever have got a voice. People can take their voice and they can use it. You can create communities that you could never create before. And I think we are seeing some amazing movements being built up because we have the internet, because we have that connection with each other that we never had before. Just look at the Me Too movement, which has become so large because we could connect over borders, over cultures, and suddenly have a new discussion. So I'm hoping that that bodes well for democracy, that these new movements and this new voice and strength and agency for more people can be used in our democratic settings. But the big question is, of course, how can we combine representative democracy, which have a lot of good things about it, with more participatory method of democracy. And I think that is the next step in our democratic discussions. How can we combine those two issues? Then, of course, there are the more hard-edged issues about protecting our democracy, where we have to protect our democracy from foreign powers trying to mess with our democratic institutions, our electoral process. So those are issues as well. But I think many things are very exciting if we can combine the movement structure that the internet has delivered with representative democracy. I think we could actually move democracy to a different level.
Wonderful. Just two more questions. One on political advice for the next generation, which is you obviously had a tremendous career in politics, successful, and did it as a woman. A new generation, particularly young women on both sides of the Atlantic, are very excited about going into politics now. What advice would you give to them and to the generation as a whole?
Well, I would argue just do it. Just try it, do it, and get yourself involved, because we do need more young people in politics. We need their energy, we need their ideas, but most of all, we need to also create policies for the next generation. So I really encourage everyone to be part of it, not just as part of a movement, but also as part of one of the political parties. I know that we sometimes seem old and boring, but there is something about political parties where we have responsibility for both the past and the present, but also the future. That is so exciting about political parties. So join political parties, be part of the change that we also have to go through. And I'm really hoping that alongside these strong movements that are coming up, we will also see young people engaging in political parties.
Wonderful. And final question, you now work on children's issues and child right issues around the world. What should we know about the state of children around the world, both in the democratic world and in the non-democratic world, and how can we work to improve it?
The most important that you know about children in the world is that we have far too many children living in war and conflict. We have not seen this many children living in war and conflict for the last 20 years. So 1 in 6 child is living in a war or conflict zone, and that's far too many. And what has happened in war and conflict is that the nature has changed. It's more urban warfare, it's chemical attacks, and all these things, and attacks on schools, hospitals, all these things actually target children directly. So war has become more dangerous for children. And I think that's very important for us to remember when we see war everywhere in the world. But on the positive side, I want to remind everyone that children have more rights than they ever had. Children is better off, they're better educated, they're healthier than they ever have been. So all this tells us a couple of things. It tells us that the world is getting better, that politics matter. It matters whether you engage in politics and you try to change the world to be a better place, because even though we are failing badly in some places, the world is actually a better place for children and most people now than it was just some years back.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you so much.